Hey everybody, welcome to Unleashed, our weekly panel discussion show about the wonderful sport of MMA. My name's Jay Petrie. I'm the associate editor of SureDog.com, and I am usurping the host duties while our buddy Ant Walker is off this week dealing with some personal matters. Now, we love you, buddy, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon. So, in this dark time, coronavirus and confusing parts of the sport, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. What better than to call in some of our friends and talk about this insanity, the world and the sport. So I want to introduce our first panelist. She's becoming a regular on the show. Good friend to Unleashed, Kristen King. She is the writer extraordinaire of My MMA News. Kristen, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what I told him to introduce me as. So I'm very happy to do that. Also, Ben, I know you're used to me having some kind of PlayStation or Playboy shirt. Forgot to do that today. So this is a Jason Voorhees jacket. So hopefully that's better.
I'll allow it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's a good substitute.
Yeah, I can dig that. All right, now we have another guest in the show who's a good friend of ours as well. Let me introduce Captain Credential himself, the CEO collector, SureDog.com coronavirus chronicler, Jason Burgos. What's up, buddy?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I've got my quarantine curls. I've got my pajamas on. I really don't give a damn right now, so I'm just ready to have some good conversation.
Oh, I love it. Hey, man, we got to get comfortable in here. What are you going to do? Now, you know who's next. He's the jack of all trades, and he's mastered them all. That's what we say all over the place. It's the senior editor of SureDog.com, one Mr. Benjamin Duffy. How you doing?
I think Ant may have to revise the way he introduces me because any trades that I've mastered, I have slid way back. I mastered putting pants on today. That's my small victory.
Baby step. So before we get lost in pants, because we can do that, let's dive into it. Let me present the stat of the week, and we can work from there. So the stat of the week is 56. 56. So if UFC goes down on May 9th, like we're all saying now, the gap between UFC Brasilia, the last card we had, and 249 will have been 56 days, which is the longest stretch since 2006, which had UFC Fight Night 3, back when they used to call them Ultimate Fight Nights. So UFC Fight Night 3 and UFC 56, which was Rich Franklin doing mean things to Nate Quarry. So with that in mind, let's talk about that May 9th event that's coming our way. So Dana White, on an interview with Brett Okamoto, announced on ESPN Instagram Live that 4 events are coming our way in May. 4, boom, 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 right on the scheduled events. So, guys, is MMA back? Are we full steam ahead? Is there something that can kind of derail this? I don't know. What do we have here? Burgos, what do you got?
I mean, UFC's back. Everybody else is pretty much on pause because they don't have the influence or the money that the UFC does. And even then, I talked about a little bit on the Back Talk video series I do. They should be fine, but every week it seems like something new with the virus and the pandemic, so it could easily change. Like if these geniuses in Georgia and stuff like that are opening up real early and taking their chances, we're not going to know about it for like another couple of weeks. So maybe May 9th happens, but maybe the 13th to 16th are totally changed because there's a crazy outbreak in the air, and then Florida is screwed up too and all this stuff. So I mean, with the way the pandemic is going, you really can't predict and think you've got this thing beat. The pandemic is kind of like the Ion Cutelaba, and it's like faking that it's hurt, and then it's actually going to come back. But there's not going to be an early stoppage here. This thing's going to keep fighting.
So our Florida expert on the panel tonight, I suppose. What do you think, Kristen? So you have all the officials on board. We have the ESPN signed off here. Is this the kind of thing where they can churn through it, or is it going to be like Burgos says, we have an event and then we have a screeching halt?
I wouldn't be surprised if that were to be the case. As you alluded to, I live in Florida, and everything is starting to be relaxed, in my opinion, way earlier than usual, but that is the opinion of a lot of other people. But our governor says that we are in dire need of content. So that is why he is deeming these sports and these organizations like UFC and WWE as essential at this time. So I think that one event could happen. I mean, when you come to a state where the economy is seemingly more important than the safety and health of its people, it was a no-brainer that the UFC was going to return to Florida, because it's going to be like, well, we'll let you reign free for obvious reasons, economic, and we need content. So I think the one event is going to go off. As far as the other ones, because they're so close together, I think that what they're banking on is, if this event goes off without a hitch, that means we got to keep the thing going, keep everything in line really fast. And then if something were to happen, it'd be like, okay, well, we already had the event. It doesn't matter. We'll stop now. We got those 4 cards out of the way. We're good. But as Virgo said, we really don't know anything. I feel like it's a dangerous move to bring it here. We've had some pretty bad outbreaks here. The numbers continue to increase, so I have no idea why we are even doing such a thing at this moment. But I don't make the rules here. I just remain in my home. And as hypocritical as it sounds, I will watch the fights if they do go on. But that is what we would all do as media members. We would watch the fights because that is our job at the end of the day. But it seems like the UFC is back, not MMA. And I think a lot of other organizations are looking at this as, well, if they set the blueprint, MMA could be back, but we just don't know.
So Duffy, yeah, she raised a good point about them being able to package a bunch of events in rapid succession. Is that a good call for them, to the UFC, to decide to say, okay, we're going to pack them all together so we can get them out of the way, and if something happens, we'll find out later?
It is a good move based on what their priorities and their goals are. I mean, they're clearly trying to ram these events through before something happens to stop any of them.
Yeah.
Whereas running one event and then waiting a month, while holding their breath, something could happen to kind of stop this train. So they're just going to make sure this train has as many cars as possible, when it takes off. I agree with Kristen. This seems inadvisable. Just about everybody we've had on the panel in the last 6 weeks has kind of leaned that way. I will say that the exception is, John Morgan, the guy most likely to be personally affected or infected, by this. Since if they really are going to let 10 journalists into these things, he's almost certainly going to be one of them. But I think in hindsight, when we look at this 6 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the UFC's choice to ram 3 or 4 events through in May is going to seem spectacularly irresponsible.
Yeah, I'm feeling that too. I'm feeling that they have the May 9th, May 13th, and May 16th. So they got 3 cards in a 7-day window. Now we know from health and all the information, incubation period is a certain amount of time, could be up to 14 days. Some are asymptomatic, et cetera, et cetera. You read the news. So it's entirely possible that these events can go on, and then May 21st pops up and there's suddenly I don't know, like Jeremy Stevens says, crap, I guess I should have been more careful, and something like that. But the concern that I see is, if something happens, we don't want something bad to happen. We as the media don't want this things to go poorly. We want these events to happen, but we want them to happen safely. If a UFC crew member who is there all 3 events, an infrastructure person, a PR type of person, whatever they have, a wrangler, whoever they have for the Burt Watson type, to keep those things going on. Chris, right? I think it's Chris. Anyway, to keep this going, if they come down with something, they're in contact with everybody. We've talked about this in the show, the Muay Thai event, where 70 people got infected because the announcer who was on the microphone touching people, shaking hands, also happened to have the coronavirus, and hey, he gave it to everybody. And we're, as the US, are well on the way to the second curve that could very well happen if we open things up like this. Now, we don't want to go into the politics world because we're in the fight game, but it kind of crosses over. So I'm concerned, and I'm concerned for the people in Florida. And I think that those that live there, that those that are going to be covering the event, whatever happens, just, I don't know. I think we should have erred on the side of caution. But we have an event that's coming our way in Florida. Duffy said it himself, 10 media members are going to be covering this thing live. Okay, 9 media members and John Morgan, 8 media members and John Morgan and Brett Okamoto. But point is, there will be 10 media members that will be allowed to cover this event live. So I gotta ask y'all, would you cover UFC 249 and the subsequent events in Jacksonville if you were given the chance? So I guess we'll open this up to our Floridian then. Kristen, would you, if you were given the opportunity, cover these shows live?
The short answer is no. Unfortunately, Jacksonville is about like 5 hours away from where I live, and it's a doable trip. It's nothing like too serious. I drove up to Tampa for Michelle Watterson and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That was great. But that was a different time. This is totally different. And personally, as much as it would be great to cover it, because this is our job essentially, is to cover these events, I have to look out for myself first as just a regular human being. And Kristen, the human being, has underlying medical issues, even though I'm fairly young, but it's not worth putting myself at risk because my immune system is affected by my health issues. So I would not want to place myself in that position. And especially if you lay it out in the scenario that you talked about a little bit before, where you said that 70 people got affected at that event. I could easily be one of those people. And because my immune system is not up to par by any means, that literally could be like a life or death situation for me. So I definitely wouldn't want to put myself in a predicament where doing my job is more important than my overall safety and health.
So yeah, that's quite respectable. I'm glad you're putting it out there. We didn't want to blow up your spot or anything, but
I'll share it because it's important. You know,
yeah.
I don't look like the type that, may not be the healthiest, but the reality is that I am not. So I can't afford to do something like this. If you guys were to accept the gig, I'd be rooting for you because this is what we want to do. You know what I mean? But as me personally, I'm just not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I guess we should probably go to the from the younger one to the elder statesman on the panel and see if he has any any thoughts on the matter. But no, really, Tuffy, if you had the chance, yeah, would you?
No, I mean, what kind of hypocrite would I be? Because I've been extremely consistent in saying that this is a bad idea. And I, as we were talking back and forth before the show started, I let you guys know that I woke up at like 5 p.m. today. That's not just, well, the reason behind that is that my wife is a nurse. She is a hospital nurse who works the night shift. She works 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So in this new world, I've just sort of migrated over to her sleep schedule so that we actually get to see each other. But she works on a floor that is normally general medical surgical and has been completely repurposed as a COVID-19 isolation ward, to the extent that a crew went into the hospital and installed new walls and doors. I didn't know you could build something in a hospital on that short of notice. That's what she does. And we have, we've in our home, and certainly she at work is, I mean, she's wearing 3 layers of protection. Like, thank goodness she is at a hospital that is not short of protective equipment.
Oh, good.
And then at home, we spent most of March kind of going back and forth on whether we should proactively isolate ourselves from each other. Because in spite of all of her best efforts, she runs a very high risk of getting it. And we finally decided, no, like, what am I going to do? Like, go, find someplace else to stay for however long. That's ridiculous. We'll just be careful and we'll do our best. But in light of that, in light of her putting herself at risk, oftentimes to help people who are there sick because they did not take good care of themselves, like, what kind of Olympic strength dickhead would I be if I was the one that brought this into our home? So no, absolutely not.
All right, we'll see if we go 3 for 3 on no's. We have somebody who, might be familiar with it. I don't know, geographically speaking, if he's familiar with the coronavirus and whatnot. But yeah, Burgos, if you got the call and Mike Fridley sure dug out of there said, hey, Jason, we got a spot on 249. Can you go down and cover it for us? Would you be our Huckleberry?
Well, as a person that is in New York,
why is this a one-way ticket, Mike?
As a person in New York right now, I'm sure it's probably gonna shock you guys, but I'm totally gonna jump into the pool of hypocrisy, and I probably would go. And I'll put it to you this way: I was credentialed to Bellator 241, and I really was open to the possibility to go on, even though especially after when it was mentioned I was going to be close to the public, because for me, I sort of look at it as I'm the type of person, there's a lot of things I have no interest in doing. I'm like, nope, don't want to do that, whatever. But there's certain things I look at as a thing in life that you get to do. And I'm comparing that in journalism, like a war zone reporter. You know, you go into the war zone, you kind of cover it. Like, I feel like it'd be an interesting thing and a unique perspective to bring to go into this unique situation and cover it. I'm not going to go into a war zone. As much as I respect those reporters, I can't. I'm scared of it. I love watching. There's one guy on Vice that he go to these places. I'm amazed by him. I admire him, but I couldn't do it. I'm too scared. But this is probably the closest I could probably do. And I try to be as proactive and being as safe as possible. I have the gloves, I have the mask, I try to be protective, and I'd be scared. In the end, it may still be up to my girlfriend if I go in, or she's fine with me going or not anyway. But I'd think about it. Like, I'd probably do it because I'd be fascinated to one, because I love taking pictures. I take pictures at every event I go to. I'd love to take pictures. That's why I wanted to do a Bellator of this empty arena. Just capture this unique moment in time, because hopefully 3-4 years from now we'll say, oh man, remember coronavirus? That was insane. But I like to have been there as a journalist, to have captured it and dealt with it and be able to firsthand say, I was there, this is what it was like, and whatever. I'd be scared, but I probably take the risk because it'd just be such a once in a career kind of situation. So I think about it. But I don't want to step on Jay's toes. I have a question though that it came off the last one. If someone from the UFC in this card, let's say Jeremy Stevens, because I think as all of us we can agree, what's great about MMA might get in front of all the other sports, and we might be the journalists that get to cover everything, a sport, before everybody, which is great. It brings more attention to a sport, brings more attention to us. But if, say, a Jeremy Stevens ended up on a ventilator, God forbid, or we're seeing a lot of stories now where younger people that get the virus can get a stroke. You know, that's a serious thing that stays with you for the rest of your life. If something like that happens, how bad do you think it damages the industry? How long does it push? Because you can probably play baseball somehow through this. You can maybe play basketball, maybe. But fighting with blood, sweat, all the close contact, it may push the sport till 2021 if someone ended up at a ventilator. What do you guys think? And is Dana White bold enough to be the Donald Trump and be Teflon for bad media at press?
You know, I think, I mean, you never want to have somebody get sick like that. I think it would almost irreparably damage the sport. I think it would, because it would be the one, you know, you can already see the New York Post article about the one that decided not to stop, or the one that couldn't wait, or any one of those headlines, that you can see that it would be immensely destructive to the brand. It was an interview with Scott Coker. I think it was with Junkie. He talked to Mike Bone, where he was saying, you know, hey, Dana White, Scott Coker, president of Bellator, was saying, hey, Dana White, hang on a second here. There's more at stake than just your event. Because, you know, you represent all of us. I mean, obviously UFC is the primary share of the fight pie, but, you know, you're putting MMA on the line here, because MMA, you know, people don't, you know, the general public don't call MMA. They call it UFC fighting. You know, I train UFC, bro, is a non-ironic statement that I've heard uttered to me in my life. So it's such a risky proposition that I to circle back to what the original question of covering is, that I feel kind of an intrigue that Burgos feels to be able to be there to cover this in such a monumental, crazy situation. But at the same time, it's just such an unbelievable risk. And there are so many questions, and I repeat myself frequently on the show, that there's just so many questions you have that are unanswered here, that when we get chided for asking questions about, we as the media get chided for asking questions about security and safety and things like that. You don't need to know, well, that's not entirely sure. It would be a very dangerous thing for the UFC if a fighter, if a media member, if a commission official got sick because the UFC had to push this event through. And I think, I don't know, maybe the other two can agree or disagree, but I think that it'd be such a damaging blow. It would stop the UFC this year. Like, that kind of pressure to put on Disney be like, whoa, timeout. We don't want to have this associated. What do you think, Kristen Duffy? You with us?
So we got 3 events coming up. what's that, a total of probably right around 70 to 75 fighters, somewhere in there.
Yep.
Do any of you believe that Lyman Good is the only person on UFC roster that has had coronavirus in the last month? Is there somebody right now that doesn't know they have it, is asymptomatic because it's asymptomatic for 2 weeks?
Yep.
Somebody that has something, can't get tested, and is just like, I am not sacrificing a third of my pay this year because I have some cough that may be nothing.
Didn't Alexander Hernandez say that in his interview with Mike Heck from MMA Fighting? It was one of the most bizarre things because that could be a reality. Yeah, I mean, the whole interview was insane, but that could be a reality for a lot of fighters where they don't know if they're sick, or they may have a hunch that they are sick, but at the end of the day, just like Ben said, I'm not going to give up my paycheck. I'm still going to fight, and then I'll deal with whatever comes next. And unfortunately, that's the way that this sport goes. You know, you have to think about yourself, and if that's how you feel that you need to make your money, and you need just to scratch that itch of fighting again, because I understand that a lot of fighters are going stir crazy at the moment. They're not getting the proper training. They're not getting, the benefit of doing what they've been doing for years on end and uninterrupted as well. Some of these fighters have fought, 2 to 3 times a year, and now it looks like they're only going to do it once, maybe no time this year. So I don't know. I think it will be an irreparable thing if this does go through. And I spoke about this at length in our column before, because once you start getting to a point where senators are coming back and saying MMA or the UFC is doing something wrong, and where these mainstream media sources like the New York Times is coming back and kind of poking fun at this, it's not a good thing. And if we go down this path, I just don't know if we're going to be able to take back all the progress that we've made in the last couple of years, because right now it's almost like we're erasing it as we try to push forward through all of this.
I mean, we've cracked the joke already that the UFC ran towards regulation by holding Fight Island, this random thing, and going to Florida. This is quite the opposite. Trying to go to the Tattoo Palace. This is, hey, anybody want us? Anybody think you're game for this? You want to take the risk? Let's roll the dice. Now,
wait, I got another question.
Yeah,
sorry,
come on.
I got another
question.
Come on. It just came to mind because you told me to Fight Island and everything, and I just told myself, like, fighters like this, they should automatically be thinking this is too dangerous. I'm fighting a guy that maybe is coming from a state that's reopened and maybe shouldn't. Like, how different do you think this would be right now if there was a fighters union? Do you think these events would happen right now if there's a fighters union?
No.
Do you hear NBA players clamoring?
That's true.
Well, there were some. What was it? This is actually the disputed reports that their NBA was going to reopen some practice facilities for some states that said, "Yeah, you can come back." And then Burgos, maybe you can help me on this one. Didn't some teams go hang on there, Tiger? Weren't some teams a little reticent about that?
I saw that headline about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fighters, and this is something that we have just shake our heads at. When the UFC canceled the Brooklyn section of 249 and was going to move it to the Apex, and then started calling for all fighters to calling all cars to have your manager get a guy who wants to be in the UFC, used to be in the UFC, and fill up this card. And the number of hands that went up on Twitter on like a John Morgan, like a media member's Twitter saying, "Hey, UFC post this," and fighters were saying, "Hey, I want this," was staggering to me. And Kristen raised the point that they want to keep going, they want to, it's me, I have to take care of me because it's a me sport. But holy smokes. But thinking about the UFC, they're the only dog in town now. They're the only one that of any merit. We're not talking like WTKF in Belarus or M1 Road to NFG. That's not what we're talking about. A major outlet, a major promotion. Bellator off the table. Cage Warriors off the table. PFL canceled its tournament. One Championship just pushed all May events, so the Mighty Mouse card at the end of May is off. Ryzen's coming back next summer. How is it that the UFC is the only one left? Is it purely a money thing? Because you have to think that other promotions have contracts. PFL has an ESPN deal. Bellator has a DAZN and Paramount Network deal. So, Duffy, I'll start with you. How is it the UFC is forcing it through when others aren't?
I think it's, and It's a combination of things. Certainly, money is part of it because, yes, like every company is losing revenue, but those other companies are not losing as much revenue, nor are they as heavily leveraged as the UFC. We've talked about the fact that the UFC accounts for both the large majority of Endeavor's $5 billion debt and their best revenue stream for making the interest payments on that debt. Something's got to give there, because Endeavor's other top money makers like Miss America and bull riding are also on the shelf. And then there's just good old dig in your heels stubbornness. Dana White does not like to be told what he can and cannot do. He likes to be the only one to do the impossible thing, the first one to do the impossible thing. Regardless of what his professional and personal foibles might be, the UFC is where it is today in large part because of his stubbornness and drive. So this is completely in character for him, and how much more so when there is actual financial incentive and people, screaming that, the money is on fire. So yeah, I think it's a combination.
So Burgos, you have specifically spoken with a lot of these. I mean, we call you the CEO collector, and we kind of have a gag on it, but no, you've really been talking to Ed Soares of LFA, to Mark Lewandowski of KSW, Campbell McLaren of Combat Americas. You've talked to these different promoters. So do they all have a similar opinion coming into it? Do they all go, we can wait, where the UFC says we're going to push forward? Is there anything like that? What are the promoters saying?
I mean, the promoters all kind of walk the same line. We're going to do what's in the best interest of the fighters and all that kind of stuff. Because I think that's all they really can do. Because I think what makes the UFC so different is they have a special level of governmental influence we've never seen in this sport ever. Like this owner, like the man who runs the company has a direct line to the president of the United States. Like he can call a guy. It's not a coincidence. Him and Vince McMahon, were on that, league leaders call a couple times now with the president, and they're both in Florida. We've seen that this president has relationships and has supporters, loyalists, or, whatever you want to call them. I think it's nice terms for what they are. Bootlickers would probably be better, that will do this guy favors. And I have no doubt Ron DeSantis, Trump gave him a call, said, hey, hook my guys up. They want to go to your state, let them in. And they got let in. It can't be understated how much of an influence he has in the government. If this was Obama, no fucking way this happens. No way this happens. But with Trump, I mean, he's gonna help his boys. This guy wants you to kiss his booty, and he will do you favors. So I'm sure Dana White has done a lot of ring kissing in a recent time. And as a businessman, smart move. If you can get the president to get some influence so you can help make money, I mean, that's the best thing for you or your business. But I think it boils down to that. He has influence at the highest levels, and it allows them something that, because when I talked to Campbell McLaren and Ed Soares and then Bellator admitted it, they all seem to be heading the studio show. They're going to go to this closed set studio. There's not going to be crowd. It's going to be, and I think that makes sense. That's why I was surprised PFL didn't do that too. That seems to be the most logical with the means you have that most companies are probably going to go with. But the UFC has greater means because of influence, and they can do the things they can do, and that's a huge deal.
So Kristen, to take the question and kind of turn a little bit to make it so it's in your field of vision, how did Dana get into Florida? How did Dana get these events? I mean, how do you think Dana and the UFC got into Florida, basically?
I think Burgos laid it out pretty well. That seems to be the way that the cookie crumbled at this point. I mean, think about the way whenever we ask the governor, hey, why did you make WWE and UFC and all these other things essential? Because they also have golf tournaments. I don't know if you saw, I think it was the Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson thing. I don't know if Tom Brady's involved. I think I saw his name.
Brady and Manning, yep.
That's what I thought. Okay, so yeah, why'd you make all of these things essential? It's a bunch of nothing. You don't really hear an actual answer outside of, well, people need things to watch. People are hungry for content and stuff like that. Me personally, I'm not hungry for content. I'm not like about to go batshit crazy for a Tom Brady and Manning golf tournament. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that for WWE, NXT. So Jason laid it out properly. It's one of those influence things. And honestly, Ben said it earlier, where Dana White's stubbornness is part of the reason why this goes through. And to be quite honest with you, half of me wants to say it is insane that this is even happening because of that reason, because of Dana White's persistence. But then the other half of me is like, that's the kind of ambition that led the UFC to where it is, and I can commend you for that. I can definitely commend Dana White for wanting to push through. I just hope for his sake that it does definitely pay off, because at the end of the day, this is a beautiful relationship that is going to start to form between Florida and all these other organizations. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. You got my state some economic relief by bringing an event to here, so hopefully you'll come back even more. You know, the same way that they go to Las Vegas for a bunch of fight cards. Maybe Florida could be the next state, you know, or outside of Nevada, it could be the next one that can have 5 to 6 cards a year here. So I could see that happening with this whole thing. It's a bunch of influence, and it's not surprising, honestly, because once you realize who's at the top of everything and who's running the game, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that this is what was going to happen. Everything was going to miraculously unpause for this group of people specifically.
Yeah, I mean, Dana himself was very clear when he said that the Tattoo Palace had our back, that they were going to let us put on the show. I mean, you remember, I think it was the first solo interview type of thing he did when he was saying, you know, we're going to come back and strong. The first thing he said was, we did it. We got the event, and then they canceled it on us. Those, if it weren't, we would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids. Seriously. But Dana said that we're going to go back to the Tachi. Tachi scratched our back, and we're going to do it too. So yes, I am in full agreement with you that Florida could be the next hot zone for the next year or two. And I don't mean that in the coronavirus context, mind you. I mean that in terms of a UFC goes there and says, we're going to fill up all these cards in Florida. There's something else I'm curious about, and maybe this is just a statement more than a thought. So all these different companies have these distribution deals with these services. Bellator, DAZN, Cage Warriors, and others have Fight Pass. I mean, UFC's got Fight Pass; they're okay. One Championship has Bleacher Report Live, and so on and so forth. DAZN specifically, I've seen reports lately that DAZN's in danger here. That DAZN has boxing content and it has MMA content. And what, snooker, I think, cricket, maybe a couple of matches here and there, some international soccer leagues, but that service is in big trouble here. I know I've seen reports that subscribers are plummeting, that the broadcasting staff is I think it's basically been furloughed or laid off altogether, and they don't plan on bringing them back anytime soon. Why would they? What are you going to bring broadcasting team back for? I mean, ESPN also cut a bunch of commentators, furloughed a bunch of commentators, said, hey, we'll be back. I mean, Bellator and CBS are starting to finally, I don't know what took them so long, finally get going and, hook up that sweet Viacom CBS sports deal. But some of these companies are going to be in trouble with no content, more so than usual. UFC is going to be fine. But other than that, DAZN and all those things are going to be in trouble. So I guess I didn't have a question after all. So I guess kind of touching on what happened last, we were talking about Florida and how UFC got into Florida and kind of setting the commission stakes, and the commission said, we're good to go. Let's rock and roll. There's an instance of another state stamping its foot and kind of folding its arms like a spoiled, angry child, I guess, if you want to put it like that. So swing or miss for the two of you and Mr. Burgos when he returns from his siesta. Swing or miss. Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, that's the official word for the commission, kind of like the TDLR. Swing or miss, the Virginia Commission made a mistake by denying Ion Cutelaba's appeal. Now, if you remember, Ion Cutelaba he fought Magomed Ankalaev. It was a wild and crazy brawl. It ended early, I suppose is the nice, prematurely. So swing or miss. Kristen, I'll start with you. Did they make a mistake?
You know what? I'm really on the fence about this. I understand their position, but because it's like, you know what? Maybe Ion Cutelaba should not have played possum at that moment, because you were on the end of a flurry that definitely hurt you, and it looked as though you were on your way to being finished. It's almost like if you say something that you know is absolutely ludicrous and then you cover it by saying you were being sarcastic when we clearly know.
Who would do that?
Yeah, that is not the case at all. So maybe don't do that, especially in the middle of a fight where that instance can happen, because we've seen it happen where an opponent launches a flurry on the other fighter and then they go down and then the referee comes in and stops the fight. That is a legitimate sequence that has happened many times. On the other hand, you said the word. It was kind of early. I don't know whether or not Ion could have recovered at that moment. And I think because of how it looked to Kevin McDonald, because the referee was Kevin McDonald during this bout, from his point of view, it looked like the end was near. If this was another referee who would have looked at it in a different way, they would have given him maybe a couple more seconds to show some life, I guess you could say. But then you start teetering on the fence of, I stopped it way too late and he took way too many unnecessary shots. So I don't know. I'm really on the fence about this. I mean, I know Ion Cutelaba and his team is upset, but there's a lot of different ways you can approach this. Does he have a right to be upset? Yes, but also no. You did what you did in the fight. You said what you said, and how could you not be expecting a response like this? Of course they're going to uphold their decision. When's the last time we've ever had someone reverse their decision? I think the Drew Dober, is that the one that they reversed?
Yes, it is.
And how long ago was that?
2015.
There you go. So they're not going to reverse something like this unless it was absolutely sure that the referee did something wrong. And at that moment, it didn't look like that. It looked like he was trying to do his job.
So, yeah, I mean, Duffy, we've kind of touched on this topic. So a good way to kind of circle about a different angle is that the commission relied on the decision made by Kevin McDonald at the time, said it was referee's discretion. So that's the end of it. That's it. He made his call in the heat of battle, and so therefore we're sticking with it. So swing or miss, Duffy, is that a mistake?
No, they need to back up the referee's judgment call. This wasn't a case of an empirical mistake where, say, the referee disqualifies somebody for an illegal kick to the head of a grounded opponent, shows up later, okay, he didn't really kick him in the head. That's a factual mistake. That I think is reversible. This is a judgment call. And I'm torn, as is Kristen, because on the one hand, Virginia is still the site of the worst robbery I've ever seen in mixed martial arts history. And that's, God, over 10 years ago at this point. And they didn't reverse that. So fuck Virginia. But on the other hand, Cutelaba was acting like an unhinged moron all week. Weigh-ins, before the fight, during the fight. This is not a street fight. This is not a battle to the death. This is a fight until the referee believes you can't defend yourself. So if your strategy involves acting like you're hurt worse than you are, you can't be mad when it works. Like that, it's as simple as that. Yeah. You pretended you were hurt worse than you were. It worked. Congratulations.
And do we know if he really pretended, though? Maybe he legitimately was hurt. And he just got up and said, oh, no, I was doing the rope-a-dope. I wasn't really hurt. How do we know?
The cage-a-dope?
The cage-a-dope. Oh,
I mean, the first head kick I really did believe rocked him. But from there, it reminded me kind of Chuck versus Vanderlei, where, Chuck caught him good, and then Vanderlei kind of staggered back. And when Chuck rushed in, Vanderlei smacked him and kind of grinned and laughed. And yeah, it's the only entertaining part of that fight. So yeah, I can't feel too bad for Ion Cutelaba here.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's perfect timing because we actually had Mr. Burgos raise the specific question. Well, not this, but he raised Cutelaba earlier in the broadcast. So now that we have him back, so Virginia has denied his appeal, Ion Cutelaba's appeal for the knockout loss. Do you think the Virginia Commission made a mistake by not overturning that fight?
I mean, of course they did. I mean, but I don't know if you all guys, I mean, I'm sorry I didn't get to see what your responses were to the question because I thought cats and dogs get coronavirus. Clearly, computers get coronavirus too. It's this fucking thing crashed on me. But I don't think anybody was surprised they didn't, though. Was anybody really surprised? This is what they do. It's like fucking cronyism. It's like the police department. Like, someone messes up, you're going to protect them to the end. That's kind of what they do, and I get it. It's like a family thing. Like, oh, yeah, I only can yell at my cousin. You don't get to yell at my cousin, whatever. So, but I mean, yeah, completely wrong thing to do. Just like going back to police department, maybe if you, made a few an example when they do mess up, that would send a message and maybe, also send a great message to the fans and media. Obviously they should have done that, but I wasn't one bit surprised about it. And if any fighter, I'm even surprised the fighters still try to bring this to commissions, like it's gonna get overturned at this point. Why? I wouldn't even do it anymore. Like maybe have your manager secretly do it and don't tell anybody because you know what the result's gonna be. I don't know. I mean, it's status quo for me. Same old stuff.
Yeah, and Duffy, your thoughts mirror my own in one major regard, that overturning a fight result, it's a question of a subjective versus an objective, an objective fact. Here it is, the knee to the head didn't land, Koscheck didn't get kneed in the head, that was all a big nonsense thing. Or, in the heat of the moment decision, oh, I stopped a little too early, a little too late, whatever it may be. Who was it? Donald Cerrone protested the stoppage. This was actually a kind of one for the record books, that Donald Cerrone, when he fought Justin Gaethje and got knocked down, dropped to his knees, and was getting beaten pretty badly, Cerrone popped back up after the stoppage to go, hey, why'd you stop it? And Justin Gaethje is yelling, and I thought it was Dan Mergliotta, saying, hey, what took you so long? So it was kind of one of those very strange judgment call situations that nobody wins. And, Burgos had a point, and I'm sure we'll be joined by him again soon, that, it's almost a waste of time and resources to try and appeal decisions, because the last time a major fight result hinging on an actual result in the cage has been overturned is 2015 in Brazil, which, by the way, what an unusual situation that the CAB-MMA, the Brazilian commission, overturned it against Leandro Silva, a Brazilian fighter. But I don't know if I'm on board completely with the commission should always side with the referee, have their people's back, because the mistake, referees make mistakes, and it should be acknowledged publicly or otherwise, because you don't hear any sort of acknowledgement. The last time I've heard any official acknowledge their idiocy or their issues or whatever was Doug Crosby was he talking to Chael Sonnen? He was talking to somebody on the phone. It was a very absurd interview where he was laughing the whole time and getting ice cream. Anyway, there's no accountability. And at the same time, a mistake doesn't sink a career. It has never sunk a career. Because, by the way, the referee that was in charge of that Silva-Dober fight was Eduardo Herdy. Why do I mention his name? Because he just ref UFC Brasilia. So obviously, his name was not cast in the mud. He wasn't thrown out of the sport for making a mistake. The commission said he made a mistake. They actually ruled it was a referee error. This is the commission's overturning the result. Hey, he made a mistake. It was an early stoppage. The guillotine wasn't there. Dober had popped his head out. So he made a mistake, and we figured out we need to fix that. Herdy's career wasn't over. Herdy's career wasn't anything. Now, whatever we feel about him and his talents or lack thereof, here he was, and he wasn't known for that mistake. And other than developing a reputation for earlier bad stoppages, there's really nothing to it. So I think the commission made a mistake, generally speaking, by not even really hearing the request, because I feel that an appeal like this is fruitless the way that the system stands, that there's nothing there. Duffy,
it wouldn't be as big a deal for Virginia that gets, one card a year, if that. But if this fight had taken place in Nevada, and Nevada even heard this, let alone overturned it, how many disputes would they get for every UFC card?
Oh yeah, big slippery slope.
Like why would a commission with any interest in its own less than 90-hour work week even entertain this?
Yeah, I mean that's the other side of the coin, is that if you give a mouse a cookie, they're going to ask for a glass of milk to go with it. They're going to, if you say, yeah, we're going to overturn this because it was an error, it was a judgment error, a judgment call, then other fighters are going to come in and go, hey, wait a second. California and the Aspen Ladd stoppage, where it was a 3-2 vote that almost was in favor of Aspen Ladd on the dispute. The dispute was that Herb Dean, as a male referee, had a different opinion on women's MMA and didn't give them the time he would have given a male fighter. That almost went through. The ramifications of that could have been pretty wide sweeping, as a majority of the referees in the sport, I think, who Camila Albuquerque is the only current major female ref, I think, in the business now that Kim Winslow's gone. So male refs, female fights, the door kicks wide open. So that's that. Now, I don't really have a good transition, so we're just going to roll with it here. So other news that's been coming out, and we touched on this last week, and I'm hoping to get Burgos' opinion. I'll ask him in a little bit, maybe. Professional Fighters League there's been a report that's come out that said that fighters are going to make $1,000 a month for their monthly stipend, but a big section of the roster has been cut. Now, originally the thing was, the fighters are going to get paid for staying on the roster. Yeah, PFL, you guys, you did a great thing because you're canceling the year and still paying your fighters. Does this change your opinion, Kristen? Does this change your opinion of PFL? That the amount and the what have you is less than we imagined?
Yeah, only slightly did it change my opinion. I thought that they did the right thing, and I think the initial reaction to hearing the news that they were going to continue paying the fighters on the roster was a great thing, because there are certain promotions that probably would not take the initiative to do something like that to protect the fighters on their roster. So I thought it was great. I was like, wow, PFL is really leading the charge and trying to ensure that the fighters do have something to go home with. But then a couple of hours later, hey, on the back end of them getting that $1,000 stipend a month, we're also cutting a bunch of them. And it was like, well, all the good faith that I just had with you guys kind of just went that way. I guess you have to find a way to pay for these fighters and pay for the stipends, but I didn't realize it would also be at the expense of the fighters. I thought that the whole roster was going to be taken care of. And I guess maybe it's different for them because of the way that they are structured, because it is a tournament format. So, I guess they have to do things differently, because I can't imagine the UFC doing something like this similar, because I think they have over 400 fighters currently listed on their roster. So I could definitely not see that happening. But I guess it's different for PFL. So at least they did something. It may not seem that great right now because the stipend is so low. And I know that there are plenty of other bills and responsibilities that may completely go over that amount of money. But they did something. It just sucks that it was at the expense of some of these other fighters, because I know probably when they heard the news, they thought that, okay, we'll be taken care of. But unfortunately, you just got your pink slip and you didn't realize that was coming either. So now you find yourself in a predicament that it's like, well, how am I supposed to provide now?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we saw when everything, the information started coming out, was that we actually saw side by side copies of the emails that certain fighters were sent. If you stuck around, you made it, and we got cut back. Sorry about that. So it was very interesting to see the tone depending on who got the letter. And this is something I raised, I think, last week, was that, I was proffering, okay, fine. PFL can do it right. They give them $3-4 grand a month, a living, be able to do it, stick around and be okay and survive. Well, it's now $1,000 a month. But, and this is another report, and it has not been confirmed or declined yet. This is a report based on what an anonymous fighter said, is that it would be for the months of July to December. So it's a 6-month check. It's not May or January or, any of the time they've spent on the roster. Something I took issue with, if that's the case, fighters signed on to the PFL in beginning of this year. Beginning of 2020, January, there were a bunch of signings. Rory got announced and so on and so forth. These fighters signed with PFL, exclusivity, so they wouldn't fight and wouldn't compete anywhere because they were going to be in the tournament, except for the international qualifiers that had to fight to get there. Everybody else had to sit on the shelf, part of their deal. So these fighters lost this window of time because of the PFL exclusivity, and aren't being compensated for it. That grinds my gears a little bit, that these fighters are stuck here because the season was going to start in May, and it would carry out through the rest of the year, and they would get paid accordingly. So there's that question there of if they're really going to get 6 months of pay. And do we really think that the PFL is going to pay Kale Harrison, Lance Palmer, Ray Cooper $1,000 a month like every other fighter? I can't see it. And maybe it's the skeptic in me, but I just can't see that happening. And it bothers me that PFL said last week, well, we're going to have more details. Fighters are sitting around going, what are we going to do now? So I guess I'm surprised and not surprised, which leads me to the next question, the next segment, the segment that, it's all right. I guess we like the name of it. I mean, you guys like it a lot. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. So didn't have any fights to talk about. So I'm going to ask the both of you, start with Mr. Duffy. What surprised you the most about any news from this past week?
I was surprised when they announced that Edson Barboza is going to fight Danny Ige. I was surprised that Oben St. Preux is moving up to heavyweight. I don't have anything to really ramble on about there. Just
weird magic.
You don't seem that surprised, Mr. Falcon.
I was surprised by the Barboza Ige announcement, and I'm honestly surprised by St. Preux announcing that he's moving up to heavyweight. I'm interested to see whether it is just a temporary expedient because he's not able to do the kind of training he's used to, or he's just, hey, I'm 36. I've got a lot of miles on me at light heavyweight. I'm just going to move up and try my luck in the next division up. And he's getting matched up with one of the biggest heavyweights on the planet in his first fight. But I will say this. I have not interacted in person with OSP, but what I've heard from people who have is that he is a deceptively large dude.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in terms of height, because he's, 6'2" or whatever, just kind of average height for a light heavyweight. But they're like, when you get up near on him, you're like, okay, you're the size of a house. I don't know how you make 205. So good on him. Good on him. If he's a dude that outside of camp walks around at 235 pounds, 240, and he's a guy that in shape before his water cut weighs like 225, dude, go get that paper. Beat up on some heavyweights. Because for one thing, everything that made him what he is at light heavyweight, and being black explosive, even at 36, he will have that advantage in speed and dynamism and explosiveness, certainly over the Ben Rothwells of the world. And anything that allows him to continue on with the most bizarre skill set of any top 10 fighter in UFC history. It is literally like you're playing the EA UFC game with your 5-year-old, but you put them in God mode. So they're like, I'm just my skill set is going to be head kicks, suplexes, and Von Flue chokes, and I'm going to win more fights than I lose. I need to see more of that.
I mean, yeah, sign me up for Latifi OSP 2 in heavyweight.
No, I want Latifi versus Oleinik because something will have to give.
Oh man, they break the ring, which by the way happened to Latifi.
What if there was they choked each other out? Because Oleinik could totally slap on while he was I'm just saying.
Hey,
we've seen double knockout. We've seen double knockouts, but double submission would be pretty
double
great.
Technical submission.
Yeah,
Sign me the hell up. So Kristen, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I guess I was a little taken aback by the random Twitter beef between middleweight champion Israel Adesanya and former welterweight champion Tyron Woodley. That had to have been the most random beef I've ever seen ignited on Twitter, and it was funny, but also ridiculous because we are talking about a fight that I'm pretty sure would never happen. Like, I have more faith in Israel Adesanya versus John Jones. And I know that fight is like worlds away. But Tyron Woodley versus Israel Adesanya, first of all, where the hell did that even come from? Who asked for that? Who wanted that? Are you still itching for it after they him and Dan Hooker tag teamed Woodley? No, I'm not looking for that. It was funny because guess what? I'm going to use my governor's choice of words. We're starved for content. So I was thoroughly enjoyed, but I was also weirded out. It was like, what is this? I'm not asking for this. So that was my most surprised moment. I was like, okay, I guess fighters are really, really itching to get back into the cage, and they're just willing to do like maybe an open weight tournament. So Woodley moves up or Israel moves down. I don't know how that would work anyway, but I guess we are really, really we're hitting that quarantine fatigue now, if that's what we're doing.
Going a little stir crazy. I think was it Casey Leiden? I think he said I don't know, trash talk just doesn't quite have the same feel right now.
Yeah.
Because they can't do anything about it. So
Exactly.
these Twitter reviews are great. However, Dan Hooker 10-8'd Tyron Woodley there. You got it.
1,000.
You have to admit when he said that, oh, I'm so sorry, Tyron. I thought that you realized that your rap career was a joke. Oh, come on. Oh,
Harsh.
off of his head.
Yeah,
So,
even if it's true, you don't have to say it. God.
oh, man. I mean, the next thing we're going to hear is that Steve-O's going to rip on him for his rap career. Anyway,
Oh
my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment. They seem to be my promotional whipping boy of sort that I just can't stop finding something stupid and terrible to yell about because I shouldn't be surprised at this point in my MMA media career. I should not be surprised by this information. This information being one championship, my best buddies. I'll see you in court next week. One championship announced they'll be releasing an independent rankings panel. Independent rankings, independent of their rankings of their company, and independent of whatever. And it was quote, an independent panel of top media, sports media, and industry experts, which will, by the way, bring more clarity and transparency for our athletes. So, pushing past the media members that were chosen, I don't want to name any names, call anybody out. That's not my bag to rip on somebody, to imply that so-and-so is on the take, that is being compensated by one championship for their coverage. However, the lineup and the outlets is relatively unsurprising. The largest outlet, I would say, of generally speaking, big media outlets is a BJ Penn. There is a ranker on that. Again, I don't feel like naming names. You can look it up yourself. But they one championship tried to pull a couple OGs, Marcelo Alonso, to kind of say, hey, look, we have legitimacy here. But here's my I'm not surprised portion. 2 rankings members on the panel are one championship executives on the payroll. Now, currently on the payroll, one championship executives are ranking fighters. And then one championship decided to buffer that panel with 2 other fighters who, by the way, fought for one championship, one of whom fought her entire career in one championship. We have 4 people officially on record, there's no allusions or references here, that have officially been paid by one championship for their services at one point. 22% of the rankings panel are people that are clearly identified as people compensated by one championship. Not a massive majority, but it's not an independent rankings panel. How can this be specifically saying an independent rankings panel and put that up top? And Mr. Burgos knows exactly what I'm talking about. That the top thing, and this was offered to other media outlets who declined because, well, obviously, how can you accept this? Rich Franklin, one of the 2 members, Rich Franklin, UFC legend, Hall of Famer, etc. So Hall of Fame? No, he's
Pioneer Wing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Rich Franklin currently runs the One Warrior series, their version of the Contender series. Don't you think he has some sort of an interest in those who are being ranked? I don't know. Really, come on. Oh, and by the way, one championship also only ranks part of their weight classes. 185, 205, 225, heavyweight. Nah, screw those guys. We don't care. How can one championship, I mean, how can this keep happening? I don't know. I don't want to know, but it's going to keep happening until somebody says knock it off, right? I don't know.
And
But
the funny thing is that if they didn't even bother with the pretense of an independent rankings panel, if they just made their own mysterious secret sauce and said these are the official one championship rankings, nobody would say a word about it. They'd be like, oh,
right.
one gonna one. It's because they have to make the big grandiose announcement of their independent rankings panel, that includes like several official state media wings like the South China Morning Post.
Yes.
And like two of their active employees. Yeah, like why call it independent? Nobody be making fun of you if you just made your rankings and put them out there.
See, yeah, that's what one of the things that really hurt is that in the interest of clarity and transparency, they are showing that they are not clear or transparent, nor are they independent. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, about this stupid thing. Mr. Burgos, is there any particular piece of news that has come out this past week that has particularly surprised you? What is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment?
I'm surprised how my computer's acting. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, the PFL stuff, I kind of talked about it on the Back Talk series and stuff like that. Just the lack of transparency with the fighters. Like, that blew my effing mind. Like, 3 fighters, Johnny Case, and
Chris Wade?
Chris Wade, there you go. Chris Wade and Ray Cooper. I was the first one to tell them about it. Like, I texted them asking, "Oh man, did you what is this? Do you know about the stipends, stuff like that? What's going on?" They didn't even know. I was the first one to tell them about it. It's insane. Ray Cooper, the guy's a champion from this year, one of the biggest stars. He didn't even know. How did Ray Cooper not know? I know he's not like a jovial wild man, but geez, give him a text, an email, like something. So, and then even talking to them further, like, even days after the announcement, they still had no idea of stipend. They got an email which was like a blanket kind of letter to everybody, and just, oh, we'll let you know at the end of the week. We don't even know. Like, how do you do that? Like, and I have a ton of respect for PFL. I have good relationships there, and talk to a lot of the fighters. But man, like, you're trying to make your way. You're doing some good things. You're signing Rory McDonald. They really seem to make it move, getting on better financial ground, and just completely flub one of the biggest moments in the promotion's history, to have to suspend an entire season, a month before it was even going to happen. Like, to not even say, look, guys, we were going to give you stipend, or if you want to get released from your deal, we can do that. We're going to try to put on events in September, October. We can't guarantee you, but we're going to try. Like, nothing. Like, you guys are either fired, or you're going to stay here and make a few $1,000s and see you next spring. Like, I just, like, that blew my mind. Like, I just disappointed, surprised, shocked. That was wild. I mean, nothing's really wild at MMA, and I'm sure this is not the first time it's happened to people, but that for what's considered a major promotion was shocking.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The fact that fighters had no idea is an outrageous thing. That on the one hand, you understand that the PFL wants to control the narrative by releasing the information at the same time, so every person can view it at the same time, instead of a Greg Savage type director of communications at PFL texting people one by one, and somebody hears about it beforehand, and Burgos gets a text message, "Hey man, you hear?" So I understand why the interest of having it all going out at once, but how about all going out at once to the fighters and not to Brett?
Yes.
I digress completely.
Like 10 minutes before, tell the fighters before you tell Brett out the photo.
Anything. I feel like you owe it to them. But now it's time for y'all to respect my authority. I'm going to run the speed bag, where each of you have 10 seconds to answer 3 questions. And we can go all Monty Python if you want, but no, we'll be okay with that. The buzzer, I don't have that, but I'll make a really annoying sound. So, first question, we'll start with our guest, Kristen. We actually have touched on this earlier tonight. Should more fighters follow OSP or Vincent Cruz, his lead, and fight up a weight class during the pandemic? Go ahead.
I don't know. I don't want this to simply be a decision based off of, hey, I gained weight during quarantine, so that means I can take the guys at the next weight class. I don't want it to be that.
Oh,
Things
I'm so sorry.
it doesn't always translate. We don't know how light heavyweight OSP is going to be a heavyweight OSP. We have no idea how that's going to work. So I hope fighters don't think that just because they put on 20 to 30 pounds while we are in quarantine, they think that they can just hop up there. Or maybe it's essentially they don't want to strip themselves down and make themselves weak, so they want to keep the weight on. I have no idea, but I think they should err on the side of caution when it comes to making a decision like that regarding their career.
It's all right. I'll make sure to be louder next time to enforce my authority. But no, it's a good point that not everybody's going to Ilir Latifi it and show up at 245, gaining 40 pounds in their last, I don't know, 4 months to show up at heavyweight and fight Derek Lewis. Not everyone's going to do that. So, Mr. Burgos, our other guest, should more fighters follow OSP's lead and fight up a weight class during the pandemic? Go.
If they're comfortable with it, they should do whatever they want. But I know without facilities, with gyms closed, some fighters are concerned about making weight. And if they don't make weight, it's lost money. So you got to do what you got to do.
Boom. Oh, wow. Nicely done, sir.
Damn.
Ooh, that's a way to bring it. So that means we're
I've
left
been
with this one
practicing.
question to see if we can go 2 for 3 here and hit the time. Mr. Duffy, should more
This is going to
fighters
take
follow
more than 10 seconds.
should we follow OSP's lead and fight up a weight class? And you have 10 seconds. Go.
I think more light heavyweight should consider this, period, pandemic or no. They're going to, for the most part, with a few physical exceptions, most of them are going to do better at heavyweight. Light heavyweight, the skill level is higher. It's a deeper division. Guys have better cardio. Guys are faster. You look at any top fighter that has spent significant time in both divisions, their resume is always better at heavyweight. Randy Couture, Igor Vovchanchin, Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier is one of the top 10 light heavyweights of all time. But he's definitely one of the top 5 heavyweights of all time too, based on resume. Move up. Take your shot. You'll do better. How am I doing on time?
Jay, what happened to the authority, Jay? He had like a minute.
I made a sound, but I got to tell you, Ant, we miss you, buddy. We need you to flex your authority and 1 for 3. All right, it's all right.
I'm Dana White here. I'm just gonna start shoving words through until somebody stops me.
Can I just make a point?
Fine.
One of my favorite things about this show is always watching in between questions and waiting for questions. The look of indifference on Ben's face. It's like it's been well trained. Like you don't even know if he's paying attention half the time, and then you ask a question, he's right on it. I love it. Ben, you're the best. I love you, Ben.
It's good. So we're gonna.
What is RBF for men?
We're gonna give him 10 more seconds to shine then, to see if he can redeem himself a little bit, bring it back, and maybe cut it down to like a nice felt 45 seconds in this 10-second window.
He should get 5 seconds. Give him 5 seconds right now.
So, all right, maybe you might be able to answer this in 5 seconds. So, rumors are circulating now that Conor McGregor is back in action soon, and he'll be headlining the first Fight Island card against Nate Diaz. This is a rumor. So we'll see where we go here. Would that be the right headliner for UFC on Fight Island 1? Duffy.
Absolutely. This is set the precedent. Make your big spectacle shows that don't necessarily have a lot of divisional relevance. Stick those on the island.
Boom. Oh, I thought you were making the statement to say put that on the island. Done with it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
I'll take it. All right. So now we're going to have redemption round number 2. Kristen. So Conor versus Diaz 3, headlining Fight Island 1. Do you think that's the right call?
On a regular basis, yes. But because I think Fight Island is something that should be forbidden or something that shouldn't happen, we should make fights that shouldn't happen. So Tony Ferguson versus Francis Ngannou.
Oh, snap. I thought you were going to say like Cub Swanson or something like that.
No, we're going big.
Chris Weidman or something versus Francis Ngannou, killing Chris Weidman. So, Burgos, you were the only one who would adhere to the time, so let's go for 2 for 2. Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz 3 for Fight Island number 1. Yes? No? Maybe? Go.
No, I mean, if it's not a pay-per-view, I just feel like it's a waste. It's almost like WrestleMania without the crowd. It's just not going to be the same with no crowd. No, don't do it.
Boom. Look at that. Look at him. Wow, you came prepared. I love it. I love it. So because of that, I'm going to give you the last question to start with. Our UFC Hall of Famer, Pat Miletich, at 52 years old, is taking a kickboxing match against 57-year-old ex-boxer Michael Nunn. Burgos, 10 seconds. What do you make of that?
And an old guy who just can't let the competitive fire die. A quick ratings payday for the promotion. I don't know what to read from it.
Well, look at you. Oh, my God. 3 for 3. Nicely done. All right. Duffy, can you keep it rolling? So Pat Miletich, Michael Nunn. Now, I guess it maybe should be mentioned Michael Nunn has been in jail for the past, 15
years.
17 years. So what are you thinking about this fight? And go.
Why kickboxing? Let's pick something that neither of us really does. That'll make it high level.
Beautiful. I like it. Succinct, simple, smooth. Kristen, can you follow that up? Pat Miletich, Michael Nunn, kickboxing. Question mark? Go.
Question mark. Period.
Oh, I like it. Oh, that's good. All right. Now it's time for me to get my authority flexed on me. I have 30 seconds. I'm going to answer each of these 3 questions together, starting when the first question is read. So, should more fighters follow OSP's lead and fight up a weight class during the pandemic? Boom. Yes, absolutely. This is the perfect time for fighters to fight in natural weight classes. The UFC doesn't want to catch weights. Why can't 2 185ers go, yeah, let's do 205. That sounds fun. So rumors are circulating about Conor versus Nate 3. Is this the right headliner for UFC Fight Island? We have a saying back home that if you're coming on, come on. So the last one, why is Pat Miletich taking a kickboxing match against Michael Nunn? If it's not for money or fame or glory, it's just, I don't even know what it's for. I guess we should believe it's not bare knuckle. Bing!
Ooh.
30 seconds on the button. Oh, nicely done. So,
wait, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
what did you guys think about Vitor Belfort's comment on my interview about bare knuckle?
I don't know if I got to it yet.
He called it combat sports porn.
Oh.
He has an interesting take on the art. So how? I mean, okay. Watching Artem Lobov versus Jason Knight 1 was the Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonnar type of messy, sloppy, dramatic, bloody brawl that drew some of us, a couple of us into the sport. Just made us go, wow, what an absolute nightmare. But personally, I liked Joey Beltran and Kryptonite more, Tony Lopez more. I enjoyed that heavyweight slobber knocker more. But God, bare knuckle. I wanted to make a joke. I didn't expect it to make the broadcast. Let's try and go out in style. So UFC is running this giveaway. This is the last question. UFC is running this giveaway called All In. If you win this I don't even know how it works. You buy in, you donate money exactly. You earn a dinner with Halle Berry, a bunch of promotional swag, get flown out to Vegas to watch some event, depending on which one, and you get the winner gets the ability to select one fight in a matchmaking session. So I'm going to start with you, Kristen. What would you talk about with Halle Berry at dinner, and what fight would you pick?
My topic of discussion with Halle Berry would be, why did you do Catwoman? And if given the chance, would you redo it? Probably. I don't know. As far as the fights that I would select, I'll give you one from like back in the day and then one currently that would make sense. Okay. How about Henry Cejudo versus a legitimate contender who's on a win streak?
Oh.
It sounds crazy, right? But no, literally, got you. Literally, how about Henry Cejudo versus Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan? One of those guys? That'd be great. And listen, I'm very excited to see his fight against Dominic Cruz. I think it's weird matchmaking, but you know what? Eventually it was going to happen whenever Dom decided to come back, and I guess he's ready now. So whatever, I'll take the fight. But the next fight better be legitimate against a legitimate contender, because I'm sick of this shtick by now. And now for my old school fight, give me the rematch between Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler. We've been asking for this for a very long time. I'm sick of beating around the bush. Give me what I want. I need it.
I can respect that. Dang, I can respect that matchup. Yeah, I'm good with that. I don't know if Henry Cejudo has earned the fun fights yet. I feel like he's not far enough in the champion where he can go play around with former champions that don't deserve title shots that haven't fought in 4 years. But I don't want to yell about Henry Cejudo right now. I want to have Mr. Duffy's thoughts on, say you won this giveaway. You get to sit down with Halle Berry for dinner. You get the whole spiel, Dana, matchmaking. You get to pick a fight. So what do you got? What would you talk about with Halle Berry, if anything, and what would you pick to fight?
All right. Well, I would say, eating dinner with Halle Berry, I would say, in spite of a lengthy and respected career that now includes an Oscar, what would you say to the 50% of people at this table who believe your career peaked with The Last Boy Scout? And I'd have to ask her. I would say, I know that UFC flyweight champ Valentina Shevchenko broke some of your ribs with kicks during the filming of your upcoming movie Bruised, but Sherdog correspondent Mike Sloan would be angry at me if I didn't ask, were her hands soft and what did she smell like?
Oh, Sloan, we hope you're watching.
And fight kind of the same thing that Burgos said. Give me Conor McGregor versus a top 10 lightweight, please. Just with no nonsense. I mean, if he wants to make a couple more 8-figure paydays in the sport, what he really needs to do is come back, show a commitment to fighting a couple times a year, and beat somebody so that just everybody wants to see the title shot against whoever, whether it's a Khabib rematch versus Tony versus Gaethje, whatever shakes out. Give me that.
So, Mr. Burgos, since your name was mentioned, we'll give you 10 seconds to reply. No, I'm kidding. So you haven't been asked yet, so we'll ask you anyway. So you get to sit down with Halle Berry, have a nice dinner, talk to Dana for a while, pick a fight in a matchmaking session, hang out with Shelby and Maynard, and do whatever you want. What would you have any particular topic to ask or talk about Halle Berry with? And what's that one fight that you could actually reasonably get match made?
The fighting part, I really didn't think enough about. So if I had to spitball, whenever I think of like fights, I'm always a total GSP fan, and I always want a GSP return on some level since he left so early. Maybe GSP Khabib, maybe if they don't want to do something like that, maybe we get GSP Anderson Silva now. I mean, for fuck it, whatever. It doesn't matter, for fun. It's almost a senior citizen fight, even though Anderson's far more of a senior citizen than GSP at this point. But fine. I mean, senior circuit, fine. That would probably be my choice. In terms of Halle Berry, I'd have so many questions on her film career, which has been such a successful career. But I'd have to ask Holly, like, you finally got the Oscar. Did you think a weird, awkward, uncomfortable sex scene with Billy Bob Thornton was going to be the thing that really got that golden statue for you? Please tell me thoughts.
Well, I don't want to follow that, but I'm going to follow that with my own thoughts about it, because I can't say that snogging Billy Bob Thornton would be the first or second or 12th thing I'd bring up with Halle Berry when I get to sit down and have a dinner. I mean, Kristen kind of swooped in and hit the note that I would definitely ask about Catwoman, because not because of how awful it was and how publicly she has stated it is awful, but some of you may have seen the Razzie award acceptance speech where she gave and was quite intoxicated, laughing and having a grand time, cursing the name of the people that brought her, and brought out her agent and yelled at him, and it was a great time. So either asking her how that whole thing put together, or 2 words, Cloud Atlas. What the hell happened? What the hell happened? Because, oh my God, what the hell happened? So that's all I want to say about that thing. So the fight. I want to pick a fight that's reasonable that can actually be made. And it's the fight that some of us want to see. And it could be dependent on if he wins his next match. But, and don't be mad, let me get through it first. I would pick Greg Hardy, his next fight.
Oh.
Now, who would he face? I can hear you asking right now. Who? I'll feed you baby owls. Derek Lewis, make it happen, be done with it, and let's rock it. So, with that, we've come to the end of Unleashed. I want to thank Kristen and Burgos for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. Looking forward to having you guys back again soon when events start rolling. I know you guys are really itching to talk about previews and reviews and what the heck happened last week. And oh my God, how did Vinny Magalhaes' leg bend like that, or whatever you want to talk about. So let's wrap by talking about where we can find you guys. Now we all know the magical post-production. We can see our social media handles. So Burgos, where can the fine people find you these days? What are you up to?
The usual spots on Twitter and Instagram, Cheap Seats Chat. Always check out my weekly mailbag video column I've been doing now for Sure Dog. It's always fun. Get some interesting thoughts, answer questions from the Sure Dog forum, which is always fun. And always just look for my interviews on SureDog.com and YouTube. Hopefully starting to get the Sure Dog YouTube starting to get a good little momentum going on there. So please subscribe, comment, like the Sure Dog YouTube, and check out my Vitor Belfort interview is up right now. It's something. You might want to see that. It's something.
I am looking forward to that.
It's everything.
Oh, boy. Man, what a good sell. I don't have to sell it. So, Chris, now's your chance. Can you show us your wares? Where can we find you? What are you working on these days?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kristen King MMA. Most of my work is on mymmanews.com. And of course, I have a column with myself and Ant Walker called King and Slim, where we discuss a topic of interest at the moment. We were set to make another column, but obviously with personal reasons, Ant couldn't make it this week. So hopefully I have something for you guys pretty soon. I love doing that column. It gives us a chance to get good banter. It's always good to have.
Yeah, I enjoy that piece that you and Ant do because it's more of a conversational nature. Like I can hear you guys talking about it. So it's got that ebb and flow. So
Yeah.
As for Mr. Duffy and myself, you can find us on SureDog.com under the features section. Both of us are listed under our drop downs. And I can say, I'm going to pimp his wares for a second, that a certain Mr. Duffy put out a pretty damn solid piece from the SureDog Vault series, where we look back at some really high-level pieces that SureDog writers have written in the past, and we go back and we see how things went. Did they get it right? How did we enjoy it? How did this inspire and influence you? And his was about Jordan Breen's interview with Ian McCall, the life and times of Uncle Creepy, and holy smokes, what a piece. Duffy was able to put his spin on it and talk about that, and I enjoyed that a lot. And you can find me on SureDog. I'm all over the place. Now, with that behind us, there's just one thing left to do, and I'm kind of itching to say it. So, even in these dark, strange times, you got to stay positive. It wouldn't hurt to stay beautiful. You got to stay skeptical of some crazy fight promoters, and above all, what must you do, everybody?
Stay sexy.
Man. Thank you. You got to stay sexy. I feel like this is my Paul Buentello moment. We will see you when we see you, and that's how we do it, people.